By now, you've all heard the news of the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger's comments pertaining to further Star Wars content being pulled back, meaning they are going to slow or stop the production of Star Wars related content, along with that of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And a lot of Star Wars fans are upset, rightfully so. Some are happy about the news, and in their own mind, rightfully so. I'm somewhere in the middle, but leaning toward being disappointed, and not for reasons you would think. In December of 2021, Bob Iger stepped down as the CEO of Disney. His replacement was the Disney Parks CEO, Bob Chapek, whatever. Then, in a surprising move, or was it really surprising, Disney board members voted to relieve Chapek, whatever, from the stresses and responsibilities that came with his title. In turn, Bob Iger was immediately put back into position on November 20th, 2022. Then in March of 2023, 7,000 Disney employees were laid off in an effort to save the company $5.5 billion. For comparison, the Netflix streaming service laid off approximately 450 people in 2022. There seems to be no comparison, really. I mean, 7,000 against 450. But when you look at the number of employees each of the two have, you start to see something interesting. Disney laid off 7,000 of its 223,000 employees, with the cut roughly out being, about 3.13% of its workforce. Whereas Netflix laid off 450 employees out of only 12,800, coming out to be about 3.52% of its workforce. But when we look at the numbers, 7,000 is obviously larger than 450. Duh. That's a lot of lives affected. But what does this have to do with Star Wars and why Bob Iger decided to pump the brakes on future Star Wars content? Simple answer is that it's a cost-cutting initiative. We can rant, scream, and yell that this is unfair, and it largely is. When you look at the reception of Star Wars versus the content the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been pumping out, there's a world of difference. Yes, Star Wars has put out some pretty divisive content over the last 10.5 years, but the Marvel content has just been plain underwhelming, aside from a couple one-offs that keep the IP afloat. The Eternals? Who cares? It's kind of stupid. Werewolf by Night? And so on and so forth. However, there are Star Wars projects that a lot of fans either didn't like or didn't watch, citing bad writing, bad set designs, and I quote, woke politics as reasons. Not my words, don't judge me. But regardless of these reasons, Star Wars content is expensive to make, with deepfake technology, CGI, practical effects, and exotic locations. Not to mention big-name actors seem to be the norm for the Star Wars IP as of late, and they come with a hefty price tag. I tried finding out how much Jack Black made from his cameo in The Mandalorian Season 3 with no success, but I'm sure he wasn't cheap, and this seems to go against what Star Wars was founded on. Let's compare. With adjustments for modern inflation, A New Hope cost $74 million to make, whereas The Force Awakens cost $447 million. And The Mandalorian Season 3 cost $120 million for a season, direct to streaming. Let that sink in. Yes, we could make the argument that A New Hope and The Force Awakens filming technologies were vastly different, and a lot of the costs associated could be from those differences. But then there are the actors, directors, writers' costs, and so on. Okay, maybe not the cost for the writers. It seems those folks make pennies in comparison. But I'm sure J.J. Abrams was a lot more expensive than the salary George Lucas factored in for himself during A New Hope. And the same for Irving Kershner and Richard Marquand. If you didn't know, they directed The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, respectively. Anyways, Star Wars has become expensive to make. Even the series are more expensive than the original 1977 film, A New Hope. And this is content going straight to streaming. There are no box office returns, and with the declining numbers in streaming on Disney+, it's no wonder the biggest budget films are getting trimmed down. Honestly, I'd prefer that method to laying people off. But welcome to corporate America. As much as I love Star Wars, we're getting to the point where we have to look at what the costs are for making it. Do we really need big names to fill the roles? Do they really need to pay bloated prices for directors and showrunners who have never ever seen a Star Wars movie? Except you, Tony Gilroy. You can stay. Same with Jon Favreau and Bryce Dallas Howard. The smartest move Star Wars has probably made in the director's chair is Dave Filoni, as far as cost. The guy's already a Lucasfilm and Disney employee, not to mention he mentored under the creator himself, George Lucas. Why isn't he heading most of the Star Wars projects? I don't think many Star Wars fans would have a problem with that. But what do the cutbacks mean for already announced Star Wars series and films? Is Dave Filoni's Mandalorian movie still happening? What about the James Mangold Dawn of the Jedi film? And, dare I say, yeah, the Rian Johnson trilogy of Star Wars films. That one has been as silent as Gene Hackman has been lately. Yeah, he has nothing to do with Star Wars. I guess that was a bad analogy. Anyways, not many Star Wars fans are looking forward to any news of Rian Johnson's Star Wars, but just let us know one way or the other, please. But is cutting back on Star Wars really a bad thing? I grew up in a time when we had to wait 3 years between Star Wars films, then a further 16 years for another trilogy. We were patient because we knew that anything that came out would be well worth the wait. But in the past few years, we have been impatient. We salivate with every new announcement, then we criticize when some of those announcements don't see the light of day. We even criticize when those Star Wars shows do come to fruition. I'm looking at you, Lando series. I'm not saying cutting back on Star Wars content is a great idea. We live in a different time now, a time when movies are pumped out in so much abundance that it's hard to even consider rewatching old Star Wars shows or movies, with new franchises popping up all the time, trying to catch that lightning in a bottle, just as Star Wars has done time and time again. Shows like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things have taken the world by storm and have proven that big budgets are here to stay in television. But is it actually sustainable? How many millions can companies spend on content that goes straight to any of the number of streaming services? Well, as I mentioned, Netflix did a round or two of layoffs of their own in 2022, and Disney and Netflix aren't the only ones. Amazon cut 27,000 jobs. Meta, the parent company of such kid-friendly social media platforms as Facebook and Instagram, have laid off more than 11,000 people, equaling about 13% of its workforce. And the list goes on. We live in an age where everything released has to be groundbreaking in order to stay relevant. In the past, you would pay for cable or satellite and get a host of channels. Now you have to pay for each streaming service independently. So in between seasons of favorite shows, members are opting out of that streaming service. But in order to maintain their audiences, streaming services have to crank out everything that they can as fast as they can. And what about the cinema experience? Where'd that go? Well, why bother when the movie is on a streaming platform in a little over a month or so after it hits theaters? And how many of you have your own home entertainment center? You can have a movie experience in your own living room and never have to leave home or have to pay $8 for a bag of popcorn. Or is it just as important to have the cinema experience, getting the family together or going out for a date to see the latest rom-com or sci-fi blockbuster can be a real treat. In the beginning, I said I was leaning toward being upset about Star Wars content being slowed. I'm getting older and I enjoy seeing the new stories, but it doesn't look like it will stop completely before I'm gone, and that's a good thing. Another aspect of it is that there's so much out there in terms of just general movies and shows of any other franchise that Star Wars isn't being seen as it was back in the day. New viewers of the franchise just see Star Wars as another IP that's there for their 30 minutes of entertainment and they move on to the next bit. Some love it and understand the true meaning of Star Wars, while others say, that was cool, and move on to the next big thing. Think I'm off my rocker? Just look at the attention span of the dating scene. It must suck to be single nowadays. But it could also be a good thing that Star Wars slows down a bit, as there will be more time to spend on the stories. They won't have to be rushed nor underfunded. Sure, there will always be a budget, but imagine if the Book of Boba Fett or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series had the budget of their own show combined with the other show, then waiting a few more years to release the next series, after the budgets were recuperated, of course. But as I said, our attention spans are smaller than that of a dead fish. Why do you think TikTok exists? Reels, YouTube Shorts? Because there's something else out there grabbing our attention faster than we can watch a 1-minute video. And streaming services know this. They know that if they don't crank out the content, their investors will pull and people will begin wandering their eyes to other horizons. And Star Wars has now become no different. As soon as The Mandalorian ended, what happened? Well, we started focusing on the upcoming Ahsoka series. Then what? As soon as Ahsoka ends, we'll be looking forward to Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, and filling the gaps with Cobra Kai or whatever other new shows catch our attention. But that's just the nature of our culture now. Me, I'm old school, like I said. I still like rewatching things I enjoyed the first time, and I find something new every time I do. I don't know how many times I've watched The Office all the way through and laughed just as hard as the first time. I can't count how many times I've watched any of the Star Wars shows and movies, and I catch something new each and every time. I was watching Andor the other day and caught so much that I somehow missed. Yeah, I'll be making a video on that. And maybe I'll bring up my own attention span, or lack thereof at times. Slowing content with Star Wars, Marvel, Stranger Things, or whatever else, the streaming companies run the risk of losing their footing. Cable or satellite TV could become a reality again. So I'm really torn. I don't want to pay for cable or satellite. I won't watch most of the channels on it, so it's kind of a waste of money for me. I like the idea of streaming services because I can pay for the things I enjoy most, and Star Wars is the very top of that list. Okay, then how would someone like Disney stay relevant? I mean, Star Wars and Marvel are what most adults watch Disney for. Without them, a lot of viewers will abandon the service. Those without children or children of a younger age. I would have no reason to keep Disney if they abandoned Star Wars completely. With Disney being what they are, more geared toward children than adults, they would have to create more content for adults. I know they're supposed to be family friendly, and I'm not talking about their own version of Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones. Looking your direction, Willow. Oof, that just isn't all that good. Subjectively, of course. And for those of you hating the new Indiana Jones, I'm sorry. It has never been amazing. Good? Yes. Amazing? Nah. It should be called You'll Never Be Able to Shoot Indiana Jones. And what's with the screaming lady in the Temple of Doom? All right, sorry, sidetracked again. But no, Disney has made films geared toward adults. In 1981, they made a little film called Dragon Slayer, and it was incredible. Do something like that again. Yes, I want more Star Wars content, but not everyone does. Some people want something non-Star Wars and Marvel, and Disney just doesn't offer much for those people. I think I went off on a tangent here. The fact is, layoffs are an ugly part of business. Amazon lays off thousands every year after their peak season ends, as do a lot of other retailers, and we don't hear anything about that. It isn't nice, but it happens, and they do it in a greater number than Disney has. I'm not saying Disney's right for doing it, quite the opposite, only that they're not the only ones. But I do not want to see Star Wars go away. There are rumors out there that Disney may sell off to Apple. Everything. Where would Star Wars and Marvel be then? Look, there's no doubt that some Star Wars projects were rushed. Maybe this slowdown period will let them reevaluate what Star Wars means to so many fans. There's no way to please everyone, but maybe they can do what Star Wars has done traditionally under George Lucas. Draw in new people with new and amazing stories. Keywords, new stories. Leave the Skywalkers alone for a while. Make stories long before the Empire or long after. Long after. The High Republic has the potential to be just what Star Wars needs at this time. Focus more on that. Okay, I'm all over the place with this. My passion is showing. By the way, next Friday I'll be moving, so there may be a short period where I don't make content. I'll still make posts in the community tab, and so feel free to go check that out. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. Is cutting back on Star Wars content a good thing or a bad thing? Of course, all opinions are subjective, but they are important to me nonetheless. And if you haven't done so, consider hitting the subscribe button and leaving a big stupid thumbs up for the video. This algorithm really has me perplexed as of late. Yes, perplexed. But with your help, maybe I can be less perplexed than I have been. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Until the next video, this is Gerald, and I am a Star Wars fanatic. Thank you all for watching, and remember, this is the way, and positivity in the Star Wars fandom can be the only way.